Hello, I'm Philip Hughes, and this series of films takes you through the process of analysing survey data. Having prepared your data for analysis that was covered in the first two films, we're now going to discuss univariate analysis. Univariate analysis means analysis of one variable at a time. It's the common starting point in research. Looking at the characteristics of those people who've responded to your survey, looking at what they're saying, the information that they're giving you. The statistics you use depend on the type of data you have for each question. The three types of data being nominal or categorical, ordinal data, and interval or scale data. And I will explain how you do univariate analysis for each of those types of data, one at a time. Nominal data, the first thing is to discover how many people have placed themselves in each category of your responses. How many people have described themselves as male or female or other? To begin to make sense of the absolute numbers, you'll want to see the percentages. And the valid percentages are usually most important because they do not include the people who did not answer the question. You may well want to group some of your nominal categories together. Of course, you can simply add up the numbers in each of the categories that you're interested in grouping. But for further analysis, it's often helpful to maintain those groups. For example, looking at religious identity, you may want to do statistics on all those who identify themselves as Christian, those who belong to other religions, and those who describe themselves as no religion. And if you're going to make use of that new grouping, then use the transform option to create a new variable. You'll be provided with a submenu which allows you to choose which categories go into the new variable. So you may end up with a variable in which 1 is all the Christians, 2 are those who identify with other groups, and 3 those who identify with no religion. It's best always to create a new variable rather than change the first variable that you had, so that you keep a copy of the original data. You may want to go back to the old categories, or even to recategorize them in some way in the future. With ordinal data, you will also want to look at the frequencies of each response. However, you may be interested in the percentage who agree and the percentage who disagree. So the percentage going in each direction, or for whom this item is true or not true. And you're adding together those who strongly agree and those who agree. The cumulative percentages may give you a quick indicator of how many agree or how many disagree, depending on how your data is coded. With scale or interval data, you'll often have too many categories in the scale or interval data for frequencies to make much sense. The basic form of univariate analysis of this sort of data involves looking at the average and the standard deviation. There are 3 measures of the average. The mean is the average of all the scores added together and divided by the number of scores. And that is the important statistic very often for a scale or interval. The median is the halfway point. So 50% of the scores are above and 50% of them are below the median. And the mode is the most common response. The mode is often used with categorical or nominal data but is less helpful in relationship to scale or interval data. On the other hand, you'll want to look at the spread of the data. And the most common form of measurement of spread is the standard deviation. The standard deviation is calculated by the computer by adding together how different each score is from the mean, and then it squares it. The larger the standard deviation, the more dispersed the responses are. You may well want to look at the shape of those responses. You can do that in PSPP by doing a histogram. This will show you the shape of the responses. Is there one peak, or are there several? Do people tend to gather around one type of response, or around more than one? While the computer can impose a normal curve based on the mean of the answers, it may well show in the histogram that there are many responses down low and another cluster up high. When you report scale data, it's often useful to break the scale down into groups, which then are more meaningful to others than the original numbers of the scale. I often divide scales of 1 to 10 or 0 to 10 into 3 groups for presentation purposes. So 1 to 4 or 0 to 4 usually means, for most people, a fail or not very important. Score of 5 to 7 is indicative of something that is of some importance, of moderate importance. A score of 8 to 10 is indicative of something that is of high importance. And so very often I'll create another variable from a scale with these groupings, which then can be used for presentation purposes. These simple scores that you obtain in univariate analysis will often have little meaning in themselves. The meaning arises when we start to compare them with something. For example, if the same question has been asked at different points in time, then the comparisons of the percentage of people who answer it may indicate a trend that is meaningful. For example, the comparison of the percentage of people who indicate that they have no religion can be very important, indicating how the population is changing over time in its attitudes and in its culture. Meaning is also found as we look at the differences and similarities in different groups of people. If people of different age groups have different scores, it may well be indicative of generational change, for example. An examination of how we look at those sorts of issues within a survey will be explored in the next film.